Three, two, one.
Okay.
You're listening to a special broadcast here at the Oscar Grant Plaza in Oakland, California for KPFA Free Speech Radio. I am joined today by Sharon Peterson and Vilma Ortiz, along with Dennis Bernstein. Myself, Miguel Gavilan Molina. We're the crew here, along with Frank and Mickey and the apprenticeship staff and members. Today we join the International Workers' Day, better known as May Day, live here at the Oscar Grant Plaza, where laborers and working class peoples are coming together to disrupt business as usual. This broadcast is a collaboration between KPFA's First Voice Apprenticeship Program, Work Week Radio, and Bright Path Videos. A little bit of history. In the late 19th century, the working class was in a constant struggle to gain the 8-hour workday. Working conditions were severe, and it was quite common to work 10 to 16 hours in unsafe working conditions. Death and injuries were commonplace at many workplaces. As early as the 1860s, working people agitated to shorten the workday without a cut in pay. But it wasn't until the late 1880s that organized labor was able to gather enough strength to declare the 8-hour weekday. Today, we see tens of thousands of activists embracing the ideals of the Haymarket martyrs and those who established May Day as an International Workers' Day. Ironically, May Day is an official holiday in 66 countries and unofficially celebrated in many more, but rarely is it recognized in this country where it began. Well, we're here. It's a beautiful day, sunshine, warmth, a lot of activity. We await the marchers that are coming in from the port of Oakland. But I'm here again with Sharon. It's good to have you here, Sharon, and Vilma.
We have our first guest here, too, and this is Vilma Ortiz, otherwise known as Vilma V. Most important to us, she's a former apprentice, graduate apprentice from First Voice. But today she's here representing Mujeres Unidas y Activas, MUA, and the Women's Building in San Francisco. And in her spare time, she's a community activist for Puerto Rican sovereignty. So welcome, Vilma.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. It's an honor to be the very first guest on what's going to promises to be an exciting 2 hours. This is International May Day in Oscar Grant Plaza, and I'm thrilled to be a part of it. I'm here because I want to give a big shout out to one of our building partners, which is Mujeres Unidas y Activas, who have a huge contingent because they organize both in Oakland and in San Francisco. And they are one of our oldest building partners. You'll see them because they're going to be all in purple. And they have a new report that has just come out called Shifting Power from the Inside Out. And it's all about making movements that are immigrant-led, that they're women-led, that the most marginalized are at the center, the houseless, those suffering from poverty, those without health care, putting those people at the center. That's Mujeres Unidas y Activas. And my message today is that I think every woman out there should be organized, should be connected to a community, a center, a workplace that is really pushing for the dignity and the rights of workers. We have to build our solidarity as workers. I mean, truly the Occupy logo of the 99%, we've got to return to that, and really women have to be at its core. So I represent the Women's Building, which is one of the oldest women-led community centers in the country, and I'm inviting women to come in and organize with us at the Women's Building.
Can you tell us any current projects of MUA?
Yes, Mujeres Unidas y Activas has just completed a groundbreaking report, and it's called Shifting Power from the Inside Out. You can go to mujeresunidas.net, and I encourage people to take a look at that report. And it's done, Mujeres Unidas y Activas, for folks who don't know, it is a woman-led immigrant rights coalition organizing group. So they organize for domestic workers, for violence against women, for housing rights, for immigrant rights, and they're an important part of the community that is housed at the Women's Building in San Francisco. One of our other oldest tenants is San Francisco Women Against Rape, and we also understand that there is a just an out of control violence against women that happens on a daily basis, where we are most likely to be killed by people we know, which is one of the most frightening things. And then for stranger homicides, war. War is one of the most destructive things that can happen to a community and to a woman and her family. The man may be out fighting, and it is devastating to her children. So on those fronts, I think women are in particular peril, but I think women also, the future is feminine, and I believe the women are going to carry us through to a brighter future. I mean, it sounds like a cliche, but I really place women at the center.
I think you're absolutely correct on that note, Vilma. And as far as the women's movement, particularly with immigrant undocumented women, there's been a struggle across the country to get equal pay, to get recognized, to get benefits, rights as domestic workers. Now, when you look at labor in this country, there's two groups that were not included back in the 1930s when labor finally forced Congress to come up with some rules, regulations, and accountability. And everyone else was able to get that. Hotel workers, lumber, factory workers, auto workers, right down the line to everybody, except two working classes. That was domestic workers and farm workers.
Yep.
The two groups,
Workers.
agricultural workers.
Exactly.
So I know that in the last, let's say 5 years, there's been major strides starting in New York and California to bring domestic workers up to the front. But the rest of the country is still either in the dark or they have a lot of catching up to do. Is there any efforts to organize domestic workers on a national front? Because they provide a service, particularly not so much to the poor working class, but to the rich and affluent who can afford, domestic workers to come in, and not just to do house cleaning, house chores, but also sometimes to take care of elderly and to take care of children.
Yeah, there's a huge national movement, the National Domestic Workers Alliance. It's led by Ai-jen Poo. If folks don't know them, that you can Google that, and you will find a very national presence on domestic workers. Also, I want to point out that in Puerto Rico, their labor has been devastated by the hurricane. They're experiencing a lot of uneven development in Puerto Rico. You can go to San Juan and the capital and things look a lot better. And then you go to the outskirts of the island and parts of the interior and it's very uneven. Some places still look like the hurricane just hit. And then there are other places that are doing better. So I think to link this with the domestic workers and workers here in the U.S., Puerto Rico has been a microcosm for what happens to workers when they really are powerless. So I'm calling out people on International May Day to really organize together and increase our power. And whatever domain you're in, the climate, organized labor, prison rights, criminal justice, you need to get organized.
And anti-violence as well. We've had, I just read in the past couple of weeks, at least 2 rapists, one an abductor, convicted, no prison time.
Very scary, yes.
And I think this sort of judicial injustice is increasing.
It will until we make those policymakers and those that make determinations on justice, social justice, and peace to be accountable. But there's, I think today we're going to be talking about different communities and the effects of the current administration, because the current administration in the White House is a racist, and not just that, but their policy is division, divide, split groups up, and so forth, and particularly, try to ethnic cleanse this country from immigrant workers and immigrant communities. But I think that today teachers and port workers are uniting today here in Oakland and throughout the state to celebrate May Day and to continue the fight for the schools that our students deserve. There's a big battle, education, the lack of education. We've seen efforts here in the last month from the not just the local teachers here in Oakland and Berkeley, but particularly in L.A., Los Angeles, which has one of the biggest school districts in the country.
Right.
And if you look at that school district, it's basically poor, black and brown. And teachers are fighting. Teachers are fighting not just for their salaries, but fighting for their classrooms, for their students. So today, there's going to be a lot of talk about those areas, but also a focus on developers and politicians who are pushing here in Oakland to build a stadium. Really? Another stadium on Howard Terminal. And it's interesting there because you have two major sports franchises here in Oakland, which provide tremendous employment and economic, power into the city. You have the so-called Golden State Warriors, and you have the Raiders. Both of those franchises, which brings millions and millions of dollars into the Oakland community, are going to be leaving. The Raiders be gone, the Warriors be gone. Where? The Warriors are moving over to some classic, luxurious, stadium in San Francisco. And what does that leave Oakland? What employment? What possibilities? It's going to be bleak. And I think that's something that we have to hold these developers and politicians accountable to. But besides that, I think that there's the Longshore's Worker Union is here to defend port jobs and demand accountability from these developers, politicians, to the community of Oakland. And that's something we're going to be talking about and looking at. The Port of Oakland is the economic engine of the East Bay, not just Oakland, but the East Bay. And if it is not taxed, and believe it or not, it's not taxed. Huh?
Yeah.
Really? I mean, really? You got one of the busiest ports on Western United States, if not the busiest. We saw what happened here during Occupy,
right,
when the port was shut down. There was ships all out past the Golden Gate waiting in line to come here. And what? Not taxed? That's something that the people here in Oakland should be outraged about. You're not taxing the port. They're making hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. You're taking out the franchises, the sports franchises. No. Something has to come in and compensate for that loss. And the answer is the Port of Oakland, start paying your taxes.
I like that.
You know?
I like that. The port is, I believe, the third busiest port on the West Coast.
Thank you.
And I would just like to say briefly, because I know I'm getting a signal to wrap this up, that women can get organized at the Women's Building. We're having a celebration on May 16th, so I invite people to come. It's the 40th anniversary of the building's opening, the 25th anniversary of the mural, the beautiful mural that graces our building. I know there's going to be a lot of people coming in and marching and organize, and I want to encourage women to continue to organize across various domains, the climate, prison rights, housing, criminal justice. Let's do it. Let's keep organized. Thank you, KPFA, for being out here on May 1st.
Thank you. But first, just a little reminder, when is the Women's Building day and time for your celebration?
It's May 16th. It's a Thursday, and it starts at 7 p.m. And I'll just say thank you, Sharon, that this summer I'm also running a Summer Advocacy Institute to encourage young women to get engaged in the fight against violence against women, and they'll intern with us for the year. If you want more information on that, you can email me at advocacy@womensbuilding.org.
Thank you very much, Vilma.
And I just wanted to add a little more thing about the Oakland port. It's interesting. The Oakland port doesn't get taxed, yet all other ports in the country are taxed. And when they're taxed, guess what? Their taxes go into the school systems. To upgrade the schools, to bring the schools up to par. We see what's happening here in Oakland in the schools. They're deteriorating. There's, some teachers have to go out and buy pencils, buy erasers for the children, for the students in their classrooms. So I think it's something that, meanwhile, here, again, the schools are suffering. I think if people begin to look at a way to tax the Oakland ports to compensate for the loss of the sports franchises, it might be able to stabilize itself. And, the schools are starved of the resources. Students need to learn and grow and are threatened with the closures of these stadiums. But again, there's going to be hundreds and hopefully thousands of people coming out today to voice those concerns and take back Oakland away from the politicians and the developers. And tell the Port of Oakland, you got to start paying your taxes. We need them for the schools.
I love that. And what you said earlier, we are living in a time when our federal government is a corrupt administration. We all know it's corrupt, and the money is not flowing to the people. It flows upward. It's getting people richer and the poor those with less resources a lot poorer. So I'm down with taxes. I'm down with improving and making a more equitable society. That's why we're all here today. Dignity to the worker and organize. Power to the people. Thank you, KPFA.
Power to the people. Oakland and way beyond. This is an international Workers' Day.
And Sharon, I just wanted to say we have another guest here.
We do.
I
Yes.
believe I just been pounding on education, and we have a representative here that's coming in with one of the contingents of teachers and organizers and students and all.
So Sean Gleason is a public high school educator who has taught at Ralph Bunche Academy in West Oakland for 5 years. He's with us for the Oakland Educators Association, representing them. And at work, Sean strives to create a loving, comfortable, safe, relevant, inquiry-based learning environment in spite of the constrictions of classroom schooling. Welcome, Sean.
Thank you very much. Welcome.
And I think before we go into the constrictions of classroom schooling, which is a fascinating subject for me, what is the Oakland Educators Association seeking now? What are your current struggles?
Well, our strike really uplifted issues in Oakland that have been plaguing Oakland for decades.
Yes.
We picked up what the educators from West Virginia, from Kentucky, from Chicago, from Arizona, from Colorado, from LA carried to us. We're fighting for equity in public schools. We're fighting against the privatization of schools right here in Oakland. Oakland seems to be the heart of the charterization of schools. It seems to be the hotbed for charters to kind of take over public education. It's happening rapidly, and the Oakland teachers, as a union, as a unified body, started standing up against that, have been standing up against it for a long time, but really came together this February, and we're continuing.
Excellent, excellent. Now, what kind of constrictions are you finding in the classroom?
Well, there are walls on all four sides of you.
Okay, I was thinking we were talking about standardized testing and
Sure.
all of that.
I think all of
bureaucratic stuff.
I think all of those things are represented by walls. I think that walls, as we know, divide people. And I think that walls limit mobility, limit what people are able to do. Learning happens through doing. And when you're inside a small space and you're carrying on a tradition that essentially has worked to teach people how to obey, teach people how to be quiet, teach people how to sit down, what you're dealing with an institution that's very constricted. Learning really should happen with movement, should happen with experience. And so I find the classroom, it's my arena, it's what I have to work in, but I do find it inherently restrictive.
I wanted to ask you, Sean, day to day, there's all kinds of struggles in the classroom, in the schools. There used to be a time and a place where school was a safe place. You could send your kids, you could send, not worry about it. Nowadays, the climate in this country, and of course the promotion of guns by the administration in the White House has made it, a place where people, are concerned about safety of children. But besides that, teachers struggling just to provide basic fundamental tools, pencils, erasers, art supplies, sometimes books. I've heard stories after stories from teachers that say, hey, I have to put aside money, for the classroom. I have to do this for my classroom. The threat of the administration in the White House a year ago saying that they're going to do away with school lunches or in the morning school breakfast, those kind of things. Has that affected Oakland?
Absolutely. I laugh because the question is almost, it's so obvious. The answer is so obvious. Of course it's affected Oakland. It's affected, I think, all school districts, which is why we're seeing this uprising from coast to coast of teachers. But certainly here in Oakland, funds are being drained from the public system, and teachers have to pull out of their own pockets always. But you mentioned the issue of safety, and I think that that's an important thing. I think that's one of the reasons why we're out here today, is to fight for safe communities, for safe schools, for safe housing, for safe jobs. And I would say that in spite of all the safety concerns in Oakland, that we do know of, schools, because of caring teachers and because of caring young people, are one of the few spaces that are really safe here in Oakland for young people. I have students who stay late after school, who stay even over school breaks on campus, because really it's a place where they know that they are being cared for and loved by their teachers and by their peers. So safety is kind of a priority for us out here today in all aspects, in terms of housing, jobs, and schools.
Excellent. Excellent. So how long have you been involved with the Education Association?
Well, I've been a due-paying member since day one, so I joined about 5 or 6 years ago. But as far as my activation within the union, within organizing here in Oakland, it's really leading up to the strike that got me moving more so than I was before. Before I was kind of following lead, and this strike enlightened me to the energy of the people around me, to see that, wow, Oakland teachers are really willing to stand up and make some noise and are brilliant leaders. And so I've taken it upon myself to join them and to follow the lead of my peers in getting more organized and more active.
We live streamed at the Oakland rally that was part of the lead up to the strike. And yes, the plaza was absolutely full. And yeah, I could feel the energy, and I'm not an educator. So yes, I know whereof you speak.
It was powerful.
It was powerful indeed. Do you feel you got the results you wanted from the strike? Or, because as a former union worker, we've had negotiations that ended up rather disappointing actually for the membership.
Well, the strike ended with a contract agreement that was about employee contracts. That wasn't the struggle. The struggle goes beyond that. The struggle goes about the issues of inequity. The struggle is about school closures. The struggle is about the drain of resources from public schools and the redirection of those resources to privatized charter schools. That struggle is a struggle for the community, and absolutely that struggle is not over.
Thank you. Was there any progress made, or is this a matter of an ongoing struggle?
It's an ongoing struggle, but you can hear behind us right now that
Yes.
that march is coming in from the port, and a lot of those voices are teachers' voices. So I'd say progress was made in the way that we got to see as teachers how much power there was in the community standing up with us. That strike was about teachers, but it was held up and pushed forward by the community here in Oakland, by families, by parents, by students, all standing up with us, and that struggle continues and will continue.
And we're seeing them coming in now, and it's union workers, all unions, all labor, and it's people outside of labor who are community activists. This is basically a day for all workers, paid or unpaid, who are trying to build community.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, Sean.
Sean, thank you.
Thank
That was
you.
Sean Gleason from the educators here in Oakland, the Oakland Education Association. And I've been here with Sharon Peterson. My name is Miguel Gavila Molina. And now we're going to turn it over to Franklin and the crew. We're seeing some of the March members are beginning to gather.
Which side are you on, boy? Which side are you on, no matter what? Which side are you on, boy? Which side are you on, no matter what?
See, I gotta draw a line, I can't take it no more. If you ain't down with revolution, what you waiting for? Making money for suckers and not communities poor. Ripping flags off of coffins, man, this ain't our war. Colonized and terrorized by the world's biggest killers. The US government, the biggest weapon and drug dealers. Filling prisons with children, incarcerating the future. MySpace and Facebook got us stuck on computers. Stuck on stupid bumping music that's abusive to the shorties. And the nonsense that you're spitting, they just listen and absorbing. I've been dormant, I've been woken, I'm a giant, I'm ready. I'm with the Apple and Oaxaca and we hold the machetes.
I rock hard like Palestinian children holding slingshots. I'm with every single kid that's down for hip-hop, for the culture, the life, the
My name is Miguel Gavilan Molina. I'm here with Sharon Peterson. We are coming at you live from the Oscar Grant Plaza here in downtown Oakland as we await the May Day marchers to come in here at the square. You're listening to KPFA, Free Speech Radio, 94.1 FM. We are bringing truth to power today, live from ground zero here at the plaza. Sharon, we got a guest here.
We certainly do. Jamie Sarfa is an educator and designer, and you live right here in Oakland. And you're a member of the Arab Resource and Organizing Center, AROC, which is a grassroots organization that works to empower and organize your community toward justice and self-determination for all. So, Jamie, tell us a little bit about AROC and your involvement.
Yeah, so I'm involved with AROC as a member, as a volunteer member. AROC is also a part of the Third World Resistance Coalition, so I'm here also today representing them. And we work with our local community and global communities in diaspora to really empower and uplift the Arab and Muslim communities and to fight for liberation in close allyship with other POC-led organizations.
I'm intrigued by the coalition. I have been seeing more coalition building amongst people who are marginalized, taken advantage of. What specific organizations are you working with? Do you know?
So there's a long list of them.
Sorry. Oh, just a sampling, please.
Anak Bayan, Asians for Black Lives, the Palestinian Youth Movement. There's a whole constellation of organizations local to the Bay that is part of Third World Resistance. And yeah, I think we're seeing a lot of these coalitions rise up right now because this is a really important moment because the white supremacists, fascists in this country have really been emboldened by the Trump regime. And it's important for us to all come together around issues that really impact all of our communities. So today, May Day is a perfect example of that. We're here to fight for protection of teachers' rights and education in Oakland, while also demanding an end to U.S. military intervention in countries like Palestine, Yemen, Haiti, the Philippines, Venezuela, because we see all of these struggles as intimately linked.
Mm-hmm. And you're so right when you say linked, because here as Native American communities, myself as a Chicano native, we have always supported the struggles, particularly in the Middle East, particularly with Palestine. Because here the American Indian movement has seen Palestina, Palestine, and the Palestinian people as the Native Americans in that area of the Middle East. And it's interesting when folks come here to California and they come to join the Native ceremonies, the Native events, or rituals, or festivals. It's always so clear that whether Native peoples on that side of the world or Native peoples here, we are part of the brown. And in this country that we have seen the civil rights movement bring African Americans into the forefront, into forging black power. Today, you know, almost 40, 50 years after the civil rights movement, we've seen a new movement, and that is the brown civil rights movement of not just Native, Latino peoples, but all brown peoples of the world who come from Native and tribal traditions, which we here in California and here in the UC very closely. You all celebrate with the drum, with the dance, with the circle, with the sacredness to Mother Earth. So those things are common ground, and we've seen that. We also seen when folks coming in from the Middle East, a lot of times they gravitate into the barrios, into the colonias, where there's a lot more safety. And as we say it here, you can be from Palestine, you can be from Egypt, you can be from Pakistan. When you stand with us, this government, under this U.S. White House government, we're all Mexicans. Wait a second, you know, but that's the way, we're all brown. And today, we're seeing those alliances get stronger and stronger, and we have so much common ground. So there is a lot of hope. What do you see with your community in regards to the upcoming elections coming up here in 2 years?
You know, we want to have someone in power who is not targeting and policing our communities. I can't really speak to any endorsements, but we have been fighting long before Trump was in power and will continue to fight long after. And I think the real strength that we see is in our community itself and not necessarily in...
Well, that's the beauty, that within your communities and within our communities, we have our own voices. We have the ability to organize ourselves. We know our issues and problems. We don't need outsiders coming in and analyzing us or all of a sudden writing books about us. We are starting to do that ourselves. We did see some incredible changes in the midterm elections, where for the first time in U.S. history, 2 women, Muslims, were elected for the first time in this country. Huge.
Yeah, really incredible. And also we still see them being really targeted.
Yes.
And that's why the fight really needs to continue. No victory is an end point. So that's why we're out here today, to really build solidarity. I think a great example of specifically thinking of May Day, of labor coming together with the community. AROC received a message of solidarity, or actually no, a message of solidarity was sent to the ILWU Local 10 from the Gaza Federation of Unions.
Very good.
So yeah, that's a perfect example of this sort of international solidarity that we really want to see.
And it is a worldwide issue, and Trump is the start of it. This is a culmination of decades, centuries of abuse. Widespread abuse. So one of the things we like to do is hook people into the community resources, the builders, the real builders. So how can people connect with the Arab Resource and Organizing Center, and what are some current projects you're working on?
Yeah, so I think the most important thing for people who want to fight for liberation to do is to get organized, to join an organization. So look for organizations in your community that are doing good work, that are working on abolition, that are working on immigration, workers' rights. There are so many of them here in the Bay Area. AROC specifically is coming off of some really huge victories. We, along with the Third World Resistance Coalition, stopped Urban Shield. That's a huge victory. Urban Shield is a SWAT training, weapons expo. This is this sort of critical juncture where the technology of war and policing is taken, in many cases, literally from the Israeli state. It's been used on Palestinians, and this is how it's also intimately linked. It's being sold to police departments locally to then be used on communities of color at home. So that's a big victory. We put a stop to that. And we also just got, after a long battle with the SF Board of Education, an MOU passed for Arab language and cultural programming in SFUSD. So I'd say just find out what issues you want to be fighting against and for. Find an organization. AROC is a great one. There's so many in the Bay. And get organized. Get to know your community.
Thank you. And could you give us do you have a URL for AROC in case the people in your community are interested?
I actually have to...
That's okay. I never look myself up either. This is a special programming for International Workers' Day. May Day was the first Labor Day, started here in the U.S., carried on just about everywhere else but the U.S., but here we are today, filling up Oscar Grant Plaza. And it's a beautiful spring day. If you can make it to Oakland, come join us.
So the URL is araborganizing.org, A-R-A-B organizing.org.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And this was Jamie Sarfa, educator and designer and member of AROC, the Arab Resource and Organizing Center.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You're listening to KPFA's live coverage here of May Day March and Rally. We're here. My name is Miguel Gavilan Molina. I'm here with Sharon Peterson, and we're going to be talking to our next guest coming here. But I just want to clarify something. Earlier, I made mention to the fact that the Oakland port, according to my information here, pays no taxes. Other ports throughout the country do. Other ports in the United States pay taxes to contribute to their cities, and a lot of them contribute to their school education systems. So again, just to clarify that note, it isn't all ports that don't pay taxes. We're talking particularly about the Oakland port, who, to my knowledge, does not pay taxes. And that is a clarity point here. Someone gave me a paper that said that to clarify that, because I was giving out misinformation. I was not giving out misinformation, just making a point in clarity that the Oakland port does not pay taxes while other ports in the country do.
And this actually makes it a lot worse, doesn't it? Our next guest is Mohammed Sheikh, Media and Communications Director for Critical Resistance. Welcome, Mohammed.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
So tell us a little bit about Critical Resistance.
Yeah, Critical Resistance is a national grassroots organization whose mission is to abolish the prison industrial complex. So that means that we fight against policing, imprisonment, surveillance, and other interlocking systems of state violence that seek to control our communities.
And they control you whether you're inside or outside.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, this country locks up more people than any other country on earth, at the highest rate than any other country on earth, right? And so that impacts not only the people that are in prison, but also their family members, their loved ones. It significantly impacts people's ability to have access to basic resources like stable housing, jobs, education, healthcare, and everything that we need to survive.
And in some cases, they lose the vote forever. They lose the power to vote.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's, a really strong movement right now to re-enfranchise imprisoned people into the process to be able to actually vote. Yeah.
Well, Mohammed, you made a point about this country. We're a population of what, maybe 500 million? In compared to China, that has over 1 billion people. And yet, this country, has more people in prison than countries that are twice, or 3 times the size we are in populations. It's just unbelievable. But again, if you look at the prison population in the United States, it's basically of color and poor people. Black, brown, and poor people. Mm-hmm. Here in California, it's outrageous. It's a profit-making, entity, for the government. Not just that, housing people, building prisons, and then they talk about economic development, and they'll build a prison in a rural area and go, look, we brought jobs to the area. Really? Mm-hmm. But again, who goes into those prisons? Who profits from those prisons? And not just building prisons and operating prisons by private companies, but then you have prison labor, okay, which is another issue. People incarcerated, sometimes for life, have to work for free, producing from license plates to producing electronic pieces, equipment, and so forth. Could you maybe talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's an extremely important issue to lift up, particularly as we are here celebrating International Workers' Day. So you have, imprisoned people that work, you have imprisoned people that are forced to work, right? And what's actually interesting is to look at, there's the main work that prisoners do in prison is to reproduce the prison, right? So to do the housework of the prison, they do the laundry, they do the reproduction of the prison is done by the prisoners, right? So you can only imagine if prisoners were paid, how much of a high cost that would be to the state governments that are running prisons. And, private prison companies are are egregious, but not particularly egregious in the scope of how much control they have over the prison industrial complex, right? Because you have 8% of the amount of people that are in prison run by private prison companies, but the rest of the system is public. So we have to also look at the interplay between the private interest and what the public government and public spending is actually doing and what role they have in this system.
Well, it's interesting when we start talking about today, workers' rights, workers, international labor around the world. In that sense, there are no boundaries or frontiers. Workers are united internationally. But yet, there's a population of workers that are incarcerated, that are producing products that mainstream outside of the prison walls utilize. So there is a benefit from the populace, the citizenry in this country that benefit from cheap labor. That's forced into production in the prison system. Is there any talk within that population of unionizing inside of the prison system?
Yeah, I mean, we have seen a lot of increase in terms of how much organizing prisoners are doing. There was the prisoner hunger strikes of 2011 and 2013 that was focused on solitary confinement, and that was led by imprisoned people. Since then, there have been a lot of actions that have been taking place across prisons in this country that are about really stopping business as usual within the prison system, stop the functioning of the prison regime, right? And the relatively small amount of people that work to produce goods that are used by society in prison, we also look at the way that imprisonment as a workers' issue targets people that have been deemed superfluous, that have been deemed unwanted by society, unable to be incorporated into the labor force. We see that the way that plays out in the military-industrial complex against third world people, against people in other countries that are deemed undesirable, unwanted, superfluous, that, we are able to just wage wars in those countries. So today, International Workers' Day, it's about workers' rights and how that connects to all of these issues, to imperialism, to the fact that immigrants coming to this country are coming to work because their economies and societies have been devastated by imperialism and economic intervention on the part of Western powers. So we stand together in solidarity beyond and across prison walls and across borders to abolish the current state of affairs.
And that's a good point. We don't think of prisoners as being workers who contribute to society, and they are. So, yes, let's stand in solidarity.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, prisoners will tell you that upon getting out, the number one thing that they have the hardest time doing, reintegrating into society, coming back to their communities, is finding a job, right? So we really have to take that into account when talking about workers' rights. Banning the box, not having, the checks on priors or convictions.
Excellent.
Well, Mohammed, thank you so much for your words. Mohammed is with the Media and Communications Director for Critical Resistance, and we got your back, Holmes.
Thank you.
And anytime in the future you need to bring words or you need to, inform the public, we're here for you. For right now, is there? How can people get a hold of you if they want to support your work?
Yeah, absolutely. You can visit our website, criticalresistance.org. I'm here right now in Oakland. We have the Oakland chapter that has worked on Stop Urban Shield, that is working to shut down a jail in San Francisco. So we're building up alternatives to policing. So visit our website, check us out, and get involved.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mohammed.
My name is Miguel Gavilan Molina. I'm here with Sharon Peterson. We are bringing you a live coverage here of the May Day march and rally here in Oakland. Several hundred people have gathered here. There's more coming. The march from the port is getting closer. And we're just about to bring in our next guest from Causa Justa, Just Cause. Unity is power. La unión hace la fuerza. Unión hace la fuerza is unity makes the strength. Sharon, we got our guest here.
Yes, I see. Hello.
Hi.
Welcome, Kitsia. So, Causa Justa is an immigrant rights organization And I understand currently and possibly primarily fighting the Alameda County Sheriff, who is in complicity with deportations. I'm in Contra Costa, where we have a similar situation, so naturally I am intrigued. What do you have current projects and actions in?
Yes, thank you. First of all, yeah, Causa Justa has been involved with the Alameda County United for Immigrant Rights Coalition, as well as the Sheriff Justice Reinvestment Coalition that is doing a campaign for an audit of the Alameda County Sheriff's budget. And this is because for the last several years, the sheriff has been not only in complicity with mass deportations by violating the California state laws that say that he's not supposed to be letting ICE know when people are being released from his custody. He has decided to, since the California Values Act passed, actually make the dates and times of people who are being released from Santa Rita public on a website, which causes issues not just for immigrant communities who might be caught outside the jail as they're being released by ICE, but also folks who might be dealing with domestic violence. Their aggressors can come and find them as they're exiting the jail. It's an issue for a lot of community in terms of safety. The Alameda County Sheriff, although Causa Justa Just Cause works specifically in particular with the immigrant rights lens against this sheriff who has been on a pendulum on and off, deciding to participate in mass deportations, allowing ICE to come to the jail and do quote-unquote visits and interview people who are in custody. In the past, after passing the California Trust Act, he had said that there would be 0 people being handed out to immigration, and then turned around and shifted that. But we know that we have fought and won against him in the past, and so right now we are participating in a larger organizing effort, right, with other community organizations that are working along the lines of criminalization and criminal justice, along the lines of Black resistance and immigrant rights, to push against all the different ways in which he's attacking our communities. Another thing that we're seeing a lot, right, by the last month, there were 34 people who died in custody at this jail because negligence and different violence that is being committed in the jail, and his budget has increased twice as much as the jail population has actually decreased by half. And so where is this money going? It's actually going, a sixth of it is going to pay off, this negligence that is being committed, this massive violence that is being committed at the jail. And so that is taxpayers' dollars that are being used, right, to continue to violate our people we know in many ways he is a representation of white supremacy in this county, yes. and we want to stop that.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask you, Kitsa, in the last couple of months, there's been a lot of, since the holidays, since December, a lot of talk about, the caravan coming. And of course, we know when we look at truth, that it's a manufactured crisis by the White House. There is no truth to it. It was manufactured. But yet, we have people, lots of women and children, who are waiting a long process of, getting asylum status. But some have made it through. Has your group been involved with those that have come through, helping them? There's going to be needs of housing. There's going to be needs of, health care, all those things. Does your organization offer support in that? Do they help assist in those areas?
Yeah, so Causa Justa is involved in a rapid response actually efforts both in San Francisco and Alameda County to make sure that as people who have been here for a while or are coming into the area, because there's actually a lot of Central American migrants in the Bay Area. It's one of the largest Latin American populations, and that dates to the 80s when there was a mass migration because of the civil wars that were also in many ways pushed by the U.S. in many ways aided, right? The violence that happened in Central America. So we're seeing a new wave, but it's not so new, right? We started to see this wave of migrants, a lot of undocumented, unaccompanied minors that ended up in the Bay Area. Like children that were fleeing violence in their homelands, and so this new wave of entire families, right, that are in exodus right now from Honduras. It's also because the root causes are also U.S. imperialism. We know that in Honduras, the coup d'etat that happened that imposed the president that is currently in power was aided by the U.S. as well, right? During that time, Hillary Clinton was head of state. So we know that, in many ways, what we're seeing right now is a continuation of forced migration that has been placed upon immigrant communities, in this case Central American communities, and we believe that they deserve full rights as asylum seekers because they are fleeing really terrible circumstances that were imposed by the U.S. in many ways. And so at the local level, again, we're involving efforts to do rapid response work when people are being released from detention, allowing for support around legal representation, supporting them with fighting cases of folks as they're fighting their deportation proceedings, and a larger as we're preparing for a larger set of folks to arrive to the Bay Area, but that's actually not unique of this moment. It's been happening for several years.
Well, as you are waiting folks to arrive, in the last couple of days, the administration in the White House, under the racist in chief, has sent more troops to the border, armed troops, as if he's waging a war or he's waiting to cause a war. That said, Kitsa, is there a way people can reach out to you if they want to support your work or learn what they can do or how they can help?
Definitely. I do want to say that the way we see the displacement that we're experiencing both at the local level and international level really does has its roots in economic exploitation and also U.S. militarism. And as we're seeing the border being more and more militarized, right, that impacting border communities, including indigenous communities that are right at the border. We understand that we need to be in solidarity and that this is larger than just immigrant rights. It's actually fighting for the rights of all people, right, to have self-determination, to have the possibilities of thriving. And we're doing that as we know that we're being targeted, right, by this administration and this white supremacist status quo. So folks can reach out to us through Facebook. Also, our website has a lot of information on our campaigns. That's cjjc.org, super easy, Causa Justa Just Cause. And as well as we have a pretty active social media campaign right now for the Alameda County Sheriff audit. Because again, we need to make sure that there's an audit that shows all the ways in which he is mismanaging taxpayer money that we could be using to provide social services for the folks that are arriving from Central America. We could be using it for alternatives to mass incarceration, for housing, right? There's so many other priorities that are more important in this period for our communities, Black and Latino communities. And so we want to make sure that we conduct this audit because we actually want to defund him and make sure that those resources go back into community for what we actually need them.
Well, Kitsa, thank you so much for being with us here. And let's keep the dialogue going. Anything comes up in the future that you need the community to know, please reach out to us.
Thank you so much for being here, and happy May Day.
Muchísimas
Thank
gracias.
you.
Thank you so much.
And once again, we were talking about coalescing organizations, single organizations, and even full-blown coalitions coalescing in just cause.
Yes, we are. And my name is Miguel Gavilan Molina. I'm here with Sharon Peterson. We are here at the Oscar Grand Plaza, gathering here to bring focus and voice to May Day, International Workers' Day gathering. And why are people gathering and marching here? International Workers' Day has been a time to uplift the struggles, honor the sacrifices, and celebrate the triumphs of working people across the world. As we stand here today, downtown Oakland, Oscar Grand Plaza, Ohlone Indigenous land. This May Day, we march in celebration and resistance with our familias, friends, neighbors, co-workers in our communities, and in solidarity with working people across all borders to continue the historic struggle against economic and social inequity. And earlier we had Mohammed that deals with the whole mass incarceration, movements in this country. And we have one of the most foremost vocal leaders in this country incarcerated to date. And to talk about that leader, we're going to bring Jeff Mackler, who is director of the Mobilization for Free Mumia Abu Jamal. Thank you for being here, Jeff, with us. And I know you're a mainstay in all these struggles. And welcome to Free Speech Radio here at Oscar Grant.
Miguel, I'm honored to be here, and KPFA is always on the spot when we need KPFA. My pleasure.
Thank you, Jeff. Again, we want to bring focus to Mumia and other political prisoners, along with Leonard Peltier, who have been incarcerated forever. And you know, Jeff, before we start talking about Mumia, it's been disturbing in the American Indian communities across the country that we had a guy who shot President Ronald Reagan and his Secretary of State. Shot to kill them, and he's out. He's free. And yet these two individuals, and particularly Mumia, is still in prison. What is up with that?
Well, first, Mumia didn't shoot anybody. He's an innocent man on death row.
Exactly.
So it's amazing that we had this new development in the case. After 37 years in prison and losing virtually every legal case, except we won the battle 3 times to stop Mumia's execution.
Right.
We got a fortunate decision a year and a half ago from the U.S. Supreme Court, and it said that in any death penalty case, if a prosecutor is prosecuting the case and later becomes a Supreme Court judge and judges the case, which is what DA in Philadelphia, Ron Castile, did, it's a violation of the Constitution. So we had a big court battle, and we just won a few weeks ago. Literally,
yes.
The District Attorney of Philadelphia, Larry Krasner, withdrew his initial objection, and now we go by the ruling of Judge Leon Tucker that says that the 17 years of appeals that Mumia was denied by the former DA can be relitigated.
Yes.
So we can now go before the Supreme Court, for example, and say, hey, we appealed Judge Sabo, the hanging judge who tried Mumia, in his antechambers before he went into the court. He said, yeah, I'm going to help him fry the, and he used the N-word. And it was recorded by an award-winning court stenographer. We lost that appeal on the grounds that, well, yes, these were racist remarks, which were made immediately before the judge entered the courtroom, but there was no evidence of racism during his litigating the case. Of course, we presented an incredible amount of evidence, the exclusion of black jurors, the kicking off of black jurors once they were seated, and all kinds of others, the intimidation of witnesses, the planting of evidence, the falsification of ballistics material, the forensic material that proved Mumia was innocent, plus eyewitnesses who saw the actual shooter run away. So we are finally back in court, and
Yes.
building a mass movement. And it's more than ironic that on this International Workers' Day, the prelude to it was we had 6,000 people demanding an appeal from all over the world. People from Germany and Italy and Spain and France and Greece signed to say Mumia needs a fair trial. We have to fight for his freedom. So,
Well, Jeff, on that note, what can people do? How can people help? Because a lot of people sometimes, they get involved in movements, they get involved in causes, and then for one reason or another, they step out of it. Well, we're calling all those people out that believe in freedom and believe that there's an innocent man that has been in prison for almost 40 years, and now there's a window open. How can people help, Jeff?
well, I think a perfect example was that on April 6th, just a couple of weeks ago, we had 400 people out at St. John's Presbyterian Church with Angela Davis and Alice Walker and Pam Africa and myself renewing the struggle to demand an appeal. So this combination of mass mobilization, and we have mobilizations coming up all across the United States and Europe, with a renewed legal battle, is going to have an effect. The only reason we're here today is because we haven't given up after 30 years of incarceration. But I want to say this on International Workers' Day. Mumia is not just some special innocent guy. The United States government incarcerates the largest number and the highest percentage of its people in prison than any nation on earth.
Yes.
It has more on death row and more executions than any nation on earth. We're here to mark the school-to-prison scenario, the mass incarceration scenario, which has 7 million people under the jurisdiction of the so-called criminal justice system. Mumia is just a sterling example. The treatment that he got in the courts, the violation of his constitutional rights, is the norm, not the exception. The same thing with Leonard, another innocent man on death row. In my personal opinion, some may not agree, we should free every political prisoner immediately. But let's take another step. Freeing political prisoners. What about freeing all the prisoners? What about freeing all the victims of racist society, of discrimination, of joblessness, of persecution, of growing up poor and poverty-stricken with no chance of a job? Any serious social movement that celebrates International May Day would do what the French did on Bastille Day.
Release
and
everyone.
every other revolutionary development. They emptied the prisons because they understood that the vast majority who are in prisons the world over are victims of an exploitive system, a system that doesn't give them a chance.
Absolutely.
So we say, empty the prisons.
Absolutely, and we're saying right now we're going to empty the prisons. We're going to wrap it up here quickly, Jeff. We got a minute here. How can people reach out to you to help the cause of Mumia?
Well, you can check us on our website. It's mobilizationfreemumia.org, and that will update you on everything. Or you can contact me at J, the initial, Mackler, at lmi.net. And I want to thank you for your long-standing support for Mumia and every cause worthy of our support at KPFA. Thanks, Miguel.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Jeff.
you, Jeff.
That was the voice of Jeff Mackler, longtime advocacy for Mumia, and of course causes the deal with the whole industrial prison complex. Now we're going to turn it over to Dennis, my chief of the bureau. My name is Miguel Gavilan Molina. I've been here with Sharon Peterson, covering the first hour. Now we're going to turn it over to the chief, who's just here, and myself and Sharon are going to take a break.